A ramen shop owner in Fukuoka once turned down $2 million in a single afternoon. The offer was real. The investor was serious. A franchise deal, 50 locations across Japan within 3 years, his name on every storefront, more money than his family had seen in 3 generations. He listened to the entire pitch, thanked the investor, and said no before the man had even finished packing up his laptop. His staff thought he'd lost his mind. His wife didn't speak to him for 2 days. And for almost a year afterward, everyone who heard the story assumed they were watching a man make the biggest mistake of his life. 5 years later, that same shop, the 112-seat counter in a narrow Fukuoka side street, had a 2-hour line every single night and a reputation that reached food critics on the other side of the planet. Not 50 locations. 1. And it was worth more, in every way that mattered to him, than the 50 ever could have been. I want to tell you why he said no, because the reasoning behind it isn't really about ramen, or money, or franchises. It's about a mistake almost everyone makes when a good opportunity shows up, and a Japanese framework that's been quietly protecting people from that exact mistake for decades. His name was Kenji, and I met him almost 2 years after he turned down that deal, long enough that the story had settled into something he could talk about calmly instead of defensively. I asked him the obvious question first. Did he ever regret it, even a little, even on a slow night? He said something that surprised me. He said the deal itself was never the problem. The offer was genuinely good, the investor was genuinely serious, the money was genuinely real. If you looked at it purely as a business decision, on a spreadsheet, in isolation, it was a good opportunity. He wasn't disputing that. What he said next is the entire lesson of this video, so I want to say it exactly the way he said it. He said, a good opportunity and the right opportunity are not the same thing, and almost nobody teaches you how to tell them apart. Most people only ever learn the difference after they've already said yes to something that cost them everything that actually mattered to them. Here's what makes this genuinely hard, and it's not a character flaw, it's how human decision-making is actually built. Behavioral economists Shane Frederick, Nathan Novemsky, and their colleagues ran a series of studies on something they called opportunity cost neglect, and their findings explain almost exactly what happens in Kenji's kind of situation. Their research found that when people evaluate a specific opportunity in front of them, they overwhelmingly focus on what that specific option offers, and they systematically underweight everything they would have to give up to take it. The offer in front of you is vivid, specific, and immediate. Everything you'd be trading away for it is abstract, diffuse, and easy to underestimate, right up until it's gone. This is exactly why a genuinely good opportunity can still be the wrong decision, and why so many people can't see it in the moment. $2 million and 50 locations is vivid. It has a number attached to it, a timeline, a clear picture of what winning looks like. What Kenji would have traded away for it, the 12-seat counter where he could taste every single bowl himself, the relationships with the same regulars who've been coming in for a decade, the actual craft of making ramen instead of managing 49 other people who were making it in his name, none of that shows up on a term sheet. It's abstract. It's easy to underweight. And the research is clear that most people underweight it badly, right up until they're the ones standing in a boardroom instead of a kitchen, wondering what happened to the thing they actually built their life around. This is where the Japanese concept of Ikigai becomes genuinely useful, and I want to be honest, most content about Ikigai online reduces it to something almost meaningless, a vague call to find your passion. The real framework is far more specific and far more practical than that, and it comes from a much older tradition of thinking about what makes a life, or a piece of work, actually worth doing. Ikigai is traditionally described as sitting at the intersection of 4 separate questions: what you're genuinely good at, what you genuinely love doing, what the world actually needs or will pay for, and what specifically matters to you, not to your investors, not to your family's expectations, not to whatever counts as success on paper. The concept, associated with communities in Okinawa that have been studied extensively for both longevity and reported life satisfaction, isn't really about finding one perfect answer once and being done with it. It's a filter, something you're supposed to run every major decision through, again and again, for the rest of your life, because the 4 answers can shift over time even when the framework itself doesn't. Here's what almost nobody explains about it clearly enough. Ikigai isn't a test that opportunities pass or fail based on how big or impressive they are. A $2 million franchise deal can score extremely high on what the world will pay for, and simultaneously score close to zero on what you actually love doing, if what you love is the daily, hands-on work of making something yourself rather than overseeing 49 strangers doing it under your name. The size of an opportunity and its alignment with you are almost completely separate variables, and conflating them is exactly the mistake opportunity cost neglect predicts people will make. Kenji told me he ran the franchise deal through those 4 questions almost instinctively, without ever having read a book about Ikigai in his life. What the world needed, clearly yes, there was real demand. What he was good at, also yes, he was skilled enough to train others. But what he loved, and what actually mattered to him, both answers came back with the same sinking clarity. He didn't want to manage. He wanted to cook. And no amount of money was going to change what those 2 answers were telling him. I want to be careful here, because there's a lazy version of this idea that turns it into an excuse to reject anything ambitious, anything that requires growth or risk, and call that caution wisdom. That's not what Kenji was doing, and it's not what this framework actually teaches. He wasn't rejecting the deal because he was afraid of scale or afraid of money. He'd already built something excellent under real pressure, real competition, and genuine financial risk in his early years. This wasn't fear disguised as principle. It was clarity, arrived at through an honest, uncomfortable process of actually asking what the opportunity would cost him, not just what it would give him. That distinction matters enormously, because saying no to the wrong opportunity and saying no out of fear look identical from the outside, and sometimes even from the inside, if you're not being honest with yourself. The test isn't whether an opportunity is big or scary. The test is whether taking it moves you toward the 4 things Ikigai asks about, or quietly away from them while a number on a page convinces you otherwise. Here's how you actually build this filter into how you make decisions, because Kenji didn't invent some elaborate process. What he had was a habit, refined over years, of asking a small number of honest questions before he let a good opportunity's size or urgency make the decision for him. The first habit is separating the size of an opportunity from its alignment with you, deliberately, on paper if you have to. Write down what the opportunity offers on one side. Write down, specifically and honestly, what it would require you to give up, not in vague terms but in actual daily reality, on the other side. Opportunity cost neglect thrives on vagueness. The moment you force the trade-off into specific, written words, most of its power to quietly steal the decision from you disappears. The second habit is running the opportunity through Kenji's 4 questions honestly, especially the 2 people skip fastest. Almost everyone can answer whether something pays well and whether they're capable of doing it. Far fewer people actually pause on whether they genuinely love the day-to-day reality of it, and even fewer ask honestly whether it serves what actually matters to them personally, as opposed to what would look impressive to people watching from outside. Those last 2 questions are usually where the real answer is hiding, and they're exactly the questions the size of a good offer tends to drown out. The third habit is understanding that saying no to a good opportunity is not the same as saying no to opportunity itself. Kenji didn't stop growing after he turned down the franchise. He spent the next 5 years deepening what he already had, refining his broth for hours longer than before, training a single trusted apprentice instead of 49 strangers, building something that eventually traveled by reputation instead of by signage. Declining the wrong kind of growth freed up the exact time and attention that made the right kind of growth possible. The $2 million didn't disappear from his life because he said no to it. A different kind of return arrived instead, one that never would have had room to grow if he'd said yes. I went back to Kenji's shop almost 3 years after we first spoke. The line outside was longer than I remembered, stretching around the corner before the doors even opened. I asked him if anyone had approached him again since then, with a bigger deal, a better number. He said yes, twice, actually, and both times the answer came faster than it had the first time, because by then he'd stopped needing to relearn the lesson from scratch. He said something I still think about. He said the first no is the hardest one you'll ever say, because you haven't proven to yourself yet that turning down something good, in order to protect something right, actually works. Every no after that gets a little easier, because you're not gambling on the idea anymore. You're just living the proof of it. That's really the whole lesson underneath this, simpler than the research and the framework might suggest. Not every good opportunity is your opportunity, and the size of an offer was never designed to tell you the difference. The only thing that can tell you the difference is an honest look at what you'd actually be trading away for it, measured against what genuinely matters to you, not what would look impressive on the way to somewhere you never actually wanted to be. The next time something good lands in front of you, before you say yes because the number is large or the timing feels urgent, ask what it would quietly cost you that isn't written anywhere on the offer. Ask if it moves you toward the work you actually love, or just toward a bigger version of work you never wanted in the first place. And remember that the ability to say no to something good, in order to protect something right, isn't caution. By every measure that actually matters, it's clarity. If this changed how you'll look at your next opportunity, subscribe, because next week I'm covering a Japanese principle about mastering one single thing so completely that you never have to chase scattered opportunities again. And I want to know, what's one opportunity you said yes to that you now realize was never actually yours to take? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.